Hello and welcome once again to WarrenThornton.com. Hello and welcome to WarrenThornton.com. I am joined as always by the wonderful Sputnik journalist, James Tweedy. Good evening, James.
Hi, Warren. How are you?
I am absolutely spiffing. And can we just turn around and say a very, very happy birthday to Nilis, who I believe, is it Nilis? Louis Bastos, sorry. Happy birthday to Louis Bastos, who is 72 today. Happy birthday, Louis.
Thank you very much, guys.
You're more than welcome. Happy birthday from absolutely everybody. And let's get straight into our show then. James, we're going to start talking first of all about something that is that has gone rather crazy over the last 48 hours, and that is the literal stench of war that is coming out of Starmer and everybody else that is sort of next to him. We are getting a massive push in the UK from people, from military to MI6 to Starmer. We're getting a massive push on Sky News and BBC advocating for going to war, James.
Yeah, so I think it's the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces and the Director of MI6, the head of MI6. Both made speeches on the same day that were trailed in the media, and the media reported it. All the media reported it. Basically making kind of, talking up a threat from Russia and making threats towards Russia, and then saying all sorts of crazy stuff like we all have to be prepared to fight the war in some way. Great Blaise Metrawelli, the head of MI6, said something like, the front line is everywhere. You're sitting in your computer or you're on your phone and you're on the front line. And yes, so you can see that if you go to Vauxhall Tube in London and you sort of look across Vauxhall Bridge, you see that building there. Yes. And it was in a James Bond film, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
They make it look like it explodes. It doesn't really.
Skyfall.
Anyway, so they've got and so there's all that. So they're really bigging it up, and the timing is quite. The timing is interesting, isn't it?
It is very much so. Shall we have a look at what dear old Blaise had to say? Here we go.
Let's be in no doubt. Our world is more dangerous and contested now than it has been for decades. Conflict is evolving and trust eroding just as new technologies spur both competition and dependence. We all continue to face the menace of an aggressive, expansionist and revisionist Russia seeking to subjugate Ukraine and harass NATO. I find it harrowing that hundreds of thousands have died, with the toll mounting every day because of Putin's historical distortions and his compromised desire for respect. He is dragging out negotiations and shifting the cost of war onto his own population. But Putin should be in no doubt. Our support is enduring. The pressure we apply on Ukraine's behalf will be sustained. Because it is fundamental not just to European sovereignty and security, but to global stability. Alongside the grinding war, Russia is testing us in the grey zone with tactics that are just below the threshold of war. It's important to understand their attempts to bully, fearmonger and manipulate because it affects us all.
Okay, so Sky have been pushing that. However, that's the head of MI6. But there are some things you should know about Blaze, who is the head of MI6 and pushing this. Let's have a little look at this video, shall we?
Love you.
I've been sitting here all day thinking, same old dream 10 years away, thinking, now my days are gone, memories linger on, thoughts of when I was a boy, penny farthings on the street, riding motor cars were funny things, frightening, rolling hoops and spinning tops, penny peddlers, lollipops, comic cuts, all different things.
Granddad, Granddad, you're lovely. That's what we all think of you. Granddad, Granddad, you're lovely. That's what we all think of you. Granddad, oh Granddad.
Planes tied up with string, flying, telephones and talking things, sighing, a radio and phonograph, Charlie Chaplin made us laugh, silently falling about, familiar things I keep around near me, memories of my younger days clearly come into my mind. Every day I find thoughts of when I was a boy.
Granddad, Granddad, you're lovely. That's what we all think of you. Granddad, Granddad, you're lovely. That's what we all think of you. Granddad, oh Granddad, Granddad.
There we are, James. That's old Blaze. She's got her private history has got a very checkered past.
Yeah. Okay. So her granddad, right. So she's like Chrystia Freeland, who was foreign minister and deputy prime minister and so on of Canada, whose grandfather was a Nazi collaborator, ethnically Ukrainian, but he lived in Poland, you know, and published he edited an anti-Semitic newspaper, you know. So, and then she supports the war. So, I mean, there's two things she said there that I thought were interesting. She kept repeating about historical revisions that she says she accuses Vladimir Putin of, and I'm not sure what she means, because Vladimir Putin doesn't really say anything about history that isn't kind of widely accepted in the West.
Yes.
You know, unless it's this attempt. What she's talking about is, in fact, she's inverting the truth that, let's say, you get this revisionism from people like Kaja Kallas in the European Commission, that Russia attacked other countries over the last 100 years. That's the latest thing she said, and no one attacked them. You know, like Germany didn't invade them twice, and things like that in the last 100 years. And you know, and the invasions that happened during the so-called Civil War following the revolution and blah blah blah. And Putin doesn't even really challenge, the Western narrative about the Russian Revolution and the Soviet Union and so on, because he says he's not seeking to revive the Soviet Union. Things like that. And then she says that, well, we're going to keep, our support for Ukraine and all this sort of thing. And she's talking about, I think she's talking about military stuff, right? She's talking or sabotage and things. So she seems to be admitting that MI6 is behind certain things which already been accused of. You see, certain actions that took place that have taken place in Russia, and in parts of Ukraine, or attacks from Ukraine into Russia, and so on. So that's an interesting one. I mean, I don't believe that spies keep everything secret. I think a lot of intelligence gathering is actually about cooking up propaganda stories.
It is,
right? So it's meant
Absolutely.
for public. It's meant to go in to be in the public domain from the start.
Yeah.
That's the intention of it. But now she's doing that. Okay. But she's doing this, and the other guy is doing this right at the time when the peace talks seem to be getting closer and closer to a deal, and the USA seems to have accepted that the war is lost.
James, let me give you an update on that. We're hearing from our Russian sources that the Russians have absolutely blitzed the peace deal that has been put forward by the Americans, and said have just literally gone out and spanked it. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Let's tell you a little bit more about Blaze, just in case. Now, MI6 has cast its distance between its new chief and her grandfather, who was a Nazi spy known as the Butcher. Now, Blaze Metrovelli was announced, obviously, as the incoming head of the Secret Service. That was back in June. And, of course, with little known about her wider backstory, documents show that her grandfather was a guy called Konstantin Dobrovolsky, who defected from the Soviet Red Army, and he was actually Ukrainian, to become the Nazis' chief informant in Cherniv in Ukraine. However, the Foreign Office turned around and said that she neither knew nor met him. It doesn't matter, does it, if he passed that on to the father and he passes that on to you? A spokesperson said her ancestry is characterized by conflict and division, as is the case of many with European heritage, only partially understood. Well, we understand that he sent many, many people to the gas chambers. Now, the family link finds hundreds of pages of documents. If you go and look in the archive in Freiburg in Germany, which shown that he was known as a butcher or agent number 30 by the Wehrmacht commanders. He personally signed off letters to his Nazi superiors with Heil Hitler, and said he personally took part in the extermination of the Jews. Now, the documents suggest that Dobrovolsky looted the bodies of Holocaust victims, was involved in the murder of local Jews, and laughed while watching the sexual assault of female prisoners. He was on the most wanted list drawn up by the KGB in 1969, which detailed his earlier work and suggests he may still have been alive by the 1960s. Now, the document that was labelled top secret and sourced from a researcher is a 460-page alphabetical list of foreign intelligence agents, or as they called them, traitors to the motherland. And in fact, the Jewish Chronicle also wrote about them, saying the same thing, and there was a 50,000 ruble bounty on his head. And of course, as he says, he personally took part in all sorts of depraved and horrible crimes, and he was said to be part of the police force that allegedly raped, shot, and robbed the bodies of Jewish women in Cherniv. He told commanders that he'd organized a Ukrainian police unit of over 300 men who cleared 12 sub-districts in Sotsnia between October and December 1941, murdering the local Jewish population. A witness interrogated by the Germans more than a year later said Dobrovolsky's subordinate had handed him a gold watch from one of the victims that he wore as a keepsake. And of course, he made money from such things as carpets, tablecloths, and of course, fur coats. So this guy is pretty much drenched in it. And of course, the father was a well-known dissident as well. There is, of course, we're talking as well about Knighton, aren't we, from the British Army, who's come out with this nonsense. Let's have a listen.
The war in Ukraine and Russia's track record shows Putin's willingness to target neighbouring states, including their children and civilian populations. The Russian leadership has made clear that it wishes to challenge, limit, divide and ultimately destroy NATO. A new era for defence doesn't just mean our military and government stepping up, as we are. It means our whole nation stepping up. And to do that, we need to contribute to that national conversation and bring these issues into the mainstream, just as our allies in many countries.
Now, James, he does go on to say that we've got to put, I'll see if I can just get that bit up for you. He does go on to say that there is, we have to talk about this, that and the other. These people have to, we'll just play this little bit from a podcast by Daniel Davis. Who, of course, does a wonderful podcast. And, of course, he gets many, many good guests on. Let's have a little look at it and we can see what was said.
Colonel McGregor, starting in about an hour from now at 11 a.m., so tune in for that. But let me show you one of them by Air Marshal Knighton of the UK, who is telling his people, again, yesterday, instead of saying, hey, we're close to an end to this war, he's like saying, no, we're actually looking forward to the next conflict with Russia. And by the way, our people need to be ready to sacrifice.
That while the price of peace may be rising, the cost of strong deterrence is still far, far less than the cost of war. Sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, to build, to serve, and if necessary, to fight. And more families will know what sacrifice for our nation means.
There we are. So really, we don't need to listen to any more that he's got to say. It's not going to be his sons and daughters on the front line, is it?
I don't know. He's an Air Chief Marshal in the Air Force. No, he said something that he started in the first clip. He starts from what Russia was saying in late 2021, what it communicated, not publicly, but directly to the US government about wanting to renegotiate the whole sort of security architecture of Europe, or whatever you want to call it, basically just to say that NATO should not expand any further and so forth, right? So he's talking about limiting, that's the limiting part. And then he says limit, divide, and then destroy NATO. And again, Russia doesn't, I don't think the Russian government has any illusions it's going to destroy NATO.
Yes.
But, and if there's divisions, it's because what NATO is doing is going against the interests of some of its members, like Hungary and the Slovak Republic, and now and the Czech Republic is kind of piping up now. And also, yeah, you see, so he's sort of made various leaps there, you know.
Yeah.
And then I mean, again, he's talking about, I don't know, what is he talking about? Talking about a kind of militarization of Britain, or just a general kind of return to a Cold War thing where everyone is vigilant, you know, like seeing Russians behind every tree, kind of thing. Or we spend more money on defense, which he probably wants.
Yes,
you know,
of course
he's
he
the
does.
Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of General Staff, right? And so he gets more, funding for his, for his forces.
He does.
And then, I don't know. I mean, are they going to expand the army? I'm not sure they can or they will. But yeah, like,
okay,
saying that we might have to fight and then raising the prospect of war. But I think probably it's scaremongering.
Yes.
I think it's scaremongering, and the what they want is a bigger defense budget, and they want, politically, they want to create a situation where there is the Cold. I don't think the Cold War ever ended. but
No.
they want to kind of ramp it up and make it that very much kind of official that we from now on and forever we see Russia as an enemy.
Yeah.
No?
So let's get into it a little bit then, because here we go. There are mass protests in France saying, you know, it's Brexit, but we don't want to die for Ukraine. Let's have a look.
Enfin, l'Union européenne veut nous pousser vers quelque chose de très grave, évidemment. Regardez ce qu'a dit hier avant-hier le secrétaire général de l'OTAN. Il faut se préparer à vivre une guerre d'une même ampleur que celle qu'ont vécu nos grands-parents et nos arrière-grands-parents, c'est-à-dire les guerres mondiales en fait. Sauf que la troisième guerre mondiale, elle serait thermonucléaire, donc avec à minima 500 millions de morts. Est-ce que c'est ce qu'on veut, franchement, ou est-ce qu'on veut juste reprendre un dialogue à peu près normal et serein avec un pays qui s'appelle la Russie? Je ne peux jamais être rassuré par von der Leyen, Macron, Merz, Starmer. Ces gens-là m'inquiètent profondément parce qu'on voit bien qu'ils ne vivent pas pour l'intérêt de leur peuple ni pour le bien commun. Ils vivent pour ils ont d'autres agendas. Ils ont des agendas idéologiques, ils ont des agendas personnels. Et donc, je ne peux pas être rassuré par ces gens-là. Ils ne m'ont jamais rassuré, ni pendant le Covid, ni sur aucun sujet. Macron ne m'a jamais rassuré, si vous voulez. Donc, j'ai pas de raison d'être rassuré par Macron. Je suis très inquiet par ces gens-là et j'espère que les peuples vont pouvoir s'en débarrasser le plus vite possible politiquement.
James Tweedy, nobody's going to be stupid enough to press the nuclear button, are they?
I mean, there are people who would. There are some people who in government and in the armed forces that kid themselves that, you know, you could somehow, you know, you could launch a surprise attack, right? That's what a lot of the, you know, why does the US still have these B-2 bombers or the
Yes.
B-1 bombers actually? Because both of those things were built specifically. They were designed to launch a sneak attack on the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
That's the only purpose of them. They're not useful for anything. The B-2 is an immense white elephant. It's incredibly expensive to buy and to operate. Just to drop high explosive bombs on things in Iran or something, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, why, you know, there is that attitude, you know, they do think, a lot of them do think that they could launch a sneak attack on Russia or China and, you know, wipe out their leadership and destroy all the missile or enough of the missiles in the silos that they would have any retaliation. There would either be no retaliation or the retaliation would be acceptable, like they only lose 2 or 3 cities or something like that, and only 20 million people dead. Only 20 million people dead, right?
James, this is just fear porn, though, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, I'm not being funny here, but first of all, you wouldn't get away with it. Nobody in their right mind thinks there is no. What I will say is there is absolutely no taste for this whatsoever. In fact, as we can see, support for Ukraine is falling now. This is meant to be a study that they did where they had respondents, and they are saying that in Canada there's some support for the war. A lot of people don't know. I think this is a bogus thing. I don't think anybody, and it says countries' financial support to Ukraine. If it came to putting boots on the ground, there'd be a mass outcry, wouldn't there, James?
I think that's not going to happen.
No.
In the grand scheme of things, right? That's not a realistic outcome right now, because Russia's got the situation. You know, Russia's winning the war, and they've decided that they've got to shut it down. And then are you going to do something that stops you from shutting it down? Are you going to keep insisting on terms that Russia will never agree to, and then the war keeps going for another year or something, and then the Russians are in Odessa or something like that? No, not saying it would happen that quickly, but necessarily. But I'm not making predictions, but you know what I mean. And then you get basically Ukraine is totally destroyed and useless to you as a proxy against Russia. And the whole thing is very humiliating, and maybe NATO does disintegrate. Maybe countries do start leaving NATO. I thought it was quite extraordinary that there was a march that big in France, of all places, against membership of the EU, right? NATO, they always had the French always were sort of, they were members of NATO, but they were, we're going to keep command of our forces. We're not going to subordinate them for a long time. And then they put them back in, but now then they've got their own nuclear deterrent and all that sort of thing. They don't, that's not under NATO command. That's their business.
Yeah.
Talking of nuclear deterrence, I've said this before on your program that Russia has updated, modernized its nuclear missiles more recently, much more recently than the US or Britain or France, really. I mean, France has got one new air-launched missile or something in the last 10 or 20 years. China is also building new missiles. But basically, their missiles are more modern, and they're aircraft, they're missiles carried by aircraft, their submarines are more modern, all this sort of thing, you see. So, and we know that the Trident, when we test Trident missiles, the ones that the US has sold to us, when the Royal Navy tests them, they keep going wrong. And there's no guarantee that any of them will fire correctly if it came to it. And that's a problem, obviously.
That's a foul canard, James. How dare you say that we keep that our military are not up to having a war in Russia? Have you not heard Sky News and the BBC?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we were all our nuclear deterrent, even when we were testing nuclear weapons, including hydrogen bombs ourselves, there was this thing of ultimately becoming reliant on the US for the nuclear weapons. So we used US designs of weapons.
Yeah.
Not the designs that we developed back in the 50s and 60s. And we don't have our own way of producing the fusion fuel, the tritium, so that the tritium gas that you inject into the casing to make it into work as a hydrogen bomb, right? We have to buy that from the USA, and in return we sell them a lot of our reprocessed nuclear waste, plutonium waste.
We do,
right? So we don't really have, and there was never any, and we use their missiles on submarines that we built, but they're US missiles, and now we know they don't work and they have to be replaced. And where is the replacement? And we would probably be better off trying to make if we're going to have a nuclear deterrent, we should try and make it 100%, homemade, right? Anyway, never mind. Moving on from that, we're not really we're not in a great position.
It's going to end up with Brian in a Bayswater basement mixing up Kieselguhr. I'm not very happy about this idea. Let's talk about our clown then, and we've got some information for you, by the way, which is going to blow your doors off. While we're talking about things blowing up, what's this idiot going to do then, James? Keir Starmer, he's coming out and banging the drum as well.
Yeah, okay, but he has to distract from certain things because he's got political problems. He's very unpopular. People in his own party are getting ready to replace him. There was a whole spat a week or two ago with Wes Streeting, the health secretary,
there was,
whether or not Wes Streeting was going to mount a leadership challenge against Starmer. And then Andy Burnham is sort of already, he's already thrown his hat into the ring, sort of, tacitly. And he supported the MP who became, who was sacked as a minister and then was elected deputy leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And although she's problematic. And then you got Andy, David Miliband, who was leader and resigned after he lost, Labour lost the election in 2015. Is kind of, he's being touted as well for a comeback. And then you've got Sadiq Khan and people like that. So you've got all these people lining up to stab him in the back.
And what they say.
So he may not, he may not last until the next election. and so he's got to make
James,
as much noise as he can about other things.
you've
Distract-
forgotten the golden rule of politics, James Tweedy. It's necessary to get squarely behind someone before you can stab them in the back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're all pretending that there's unity, but he's in trouble, you know. And
He
the
is.
Labour Party is really in trouble in the polls. They're actually the Conservative Party is sort of edging up a bit in the polls, and it's some of them it's overtaken the Labour Party. And then so the Labour Party is in third place, and the Greens are on the rise as well. And so the Labour Party might be in fourth place in the polls. And then you've got elections in Scotland and Wales next spring, right, next May,
Yes.
to the devolved parliaments, assemblies, whatever, there. And that's going to be a big shocker. Labour's going to do badly, and then that might be the moment when they will go and see Keir Starmer and tell him to resign.
Yes,
Like they do with
and then
manufacturing
Sweeting will take over.
Yeah.
there-
So
yeah, go on, bud.
well, yeah, that's it. So
Okay.
he's got to try and distract.
So of course, well, we've got a distraction though, James, because obviously I put that picture up saying this time it's personal. With the 3 Ukrainian, should we say, male models is the best way. We don't want to get into too much trouble. But we have it on very good authority that obviously the hearing is coming up in April, and we have it on very good authority that they're panicking to come up with good reasons as to why, and they're going to try and put it back even further. And they're panicking and trying to come up with good reasons. And I kid you not, we have this confirmed from 2 sources. One of the things put forward, James Tweedy, was the fact that they knew where Keir Starmer lived because they both had an interest in Eastern European railways, rather like the guys who go on holiday to Russia and have an interest in boats from the 15th century secular basket weaving. I mean, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, wide gauge or narrow gauge railway tracks. Well, they knew his old address, and
James, don't do that to me.
Yeah, and the license plate. He doesn't live there anymore, but they set fire to the doorway of a house or something, and there was a car that he used to own and sold, and it's someone else's car now, and then they set that on fire, right?
Yes.
So they'd known him, let's say, years before. That sounds like they'd known him years before. This is old information.
Yes.
So where do you get that? It wouldn't be, even if you were somehow able to get that information from like a mole in the police, right? This is because that's the sort of level you'd have to go to, I think, for a car, right? They would have to have gotten that information years. If they had a mole in the police, they would have told them the license plate of Starmer's current car, not a car that he had.
Yes,
years
exactly.
ago.
Yeah.
They met him, and they knew his car. They'd written down the license plate number of his car or taken a photo, right? And they'd been to the address, probably, right? So, I mean, if you want to know how they're going to cover that up, maybe they'll be persuaded to plead guilty, so there's no trial, so no evidence has to be presented, and then then they get a suspended sentence or something.
Absolutely, it's a good call. There are people that are, of course, using this as a thing. Illegal migrants waiting for all the fighting age men to go off to World War III, leaving all the women behind. And that is a meme that's doing the rounds at the moment. But here's the thing, though. If they want people to go in the army, all the people arriving on dinghies can go in, can't they? And prove their worth to the country, James Tweedy. Or is that not on the agenda?
I don't know. They do that. They did that in the USA about 20 years ago. They said, if you join the army, you would get citizenship. You were there on a green card or something, or you were in the country, but you weren't a citizen. You could get citizenship by joining the army and going off and fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq. The people who are being trafficked here are being trafficked to work cheaply, to be cheap labor,
Yes.
not to go off and fight in a war that, which war is it anyway? You know what I mean? I mean, a few years ago, it was like looking after French interests in places like Mali, and that's what, that's when we left the European Union, or when we voted to leave the European Union, everyone, it had come out that they were talking, and it was denied, but it had come out that they were talking about a joint European Union army kind of structure, where
Yes.
all the armies would be under some kind of central command, which was separate from NATO even. So, they'd be the servant of two masters. And it raised the prospect that soldiers from other countries than France, for instance, might be sent to the former French colonies in Africa to fight God knows who, like the Vietnam War or something, to try and keep control of those places for French business interests. And everyone was like, no thanks. So yeah, but they're not here for that. They're here for the cheap labor. That's why they've been trafficked into the country. We know that.
But we can put them to good use. Let's hear from Louis Bastos. Louis.
Hi, good evening, good morning.
Good evening.
What the West is doing is talking all about this militarization to scare the West, to scare us and control us. That's all they're doing, because they're never going to do jack shit about fighting. They're just trying to get us, control us, and get us to be scared and panic about Russia and Russia this and Russia that and Russia that. The West is just trying to make us scared so they can control us. Same with COVID, my opinion.
I think you're probably right. And let's get into this a little bit then. This here. Now, they've come to an agreement on nothing with the Americans. They've refused to give up land. That's the latest that we're hearing, just getting out from some of our friends here. That, of course, this is going to, straight away, they've literally bastardized the whole thing. They met the Germans earlier on before. It was a bit like the old meet in the new, we've said before. The problem that we have, James Tweedy, is when they took the original plan from Witkoff, of which the Russians said there were some of those items that were worth discussion, others were rejected out of hand. It has been so warped now and so bastardized that there's almost nothing in that plan whatsoever. And once again, it's been a complete waste of time, hasn't it, James?
The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that, has said now that the US has accepted that Ukraine won't join NATO, and that it will have to give up some territories. And now what they're discussing is things like guaranteeing the right, language rights in Ukraine for Russian speakers and maybe other language, because there are various kind of linguistic minorities, and for the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yes.
And so that's interesting. I don't think he's making that up. I don't think he would say that if it wasn't true. And now, then what you get in response to that is Ukraine, and what maybe shows that's true is that Ukraine is now saying, well, we're not going to join NATO, but we want a NATO type, we want an Article 5, NATO Article 5 mutual defense.
But Article 5 is just a chat, James. When you read Article 5, it's just everybody will go get around and have a talk about it.
Yeah, okay. But what I'm saying is that they say they want security guarantees from NATO, which would add up to effectively being part of NATO.
Mhm.
You see, so they want NATO membership by another name.
Yeah.
So okay, they're still trying to get, they're still trying to claw something back, but again, the Russians won't agree to that. And then if the Russians won't agree to that, what do you threaten the Russians with? Are we going to keep fighting the war and keep losing it? How exactly are they going to make it painful for Russia? They're going to suddenly start winning the war, with what resources? It takes a lot of resources. They don't have that, right?
No.
So and so on. So and then how are they going to sanction Russia that they haven't already done so?
Yes, and of course they're saying, conversation with journalists for the first time I heard from the mouth of American negotiators. This is too saying. Steve Witkoff was unequivocal here. The Americans will engage in security guarantees for Ukraine in such a way Russia will have no doubt that in the event of these ceasefire conditions, the US response will be military. No, it won't. Sean Murphy's been waiting to talk. Sean.
Oh, sorry, Warren. Yeah, I was just going to say that clip with Zelensky signing, was that the acquittance roll he was signing?
That's the one.
Because I never got a seat when I signed it.
Yeah, quite remarkable, isn't it?
Drawing his money.
And the thing is that we have this now, this nonsense from Tusk coming out. There's nothing. Quite simply, there is nothing whatsoever. The Americans have now come out and denied that, with Tusk saying that they gave any assurances whatsoever.
Yeah, because it's not Witkoff saying that; it's Tusk saying that, and
yes,
that's what Tusk wants to happen.
Yes,
and it's this old trick of sort of announcing something that hasn't been agreed in the hope that it would be, I don't know, you sort of embarrass the other person into agreeing to it, rather than publicly disagreeing with someone who's supposed to be your friend, right? Your ally.
Yes. Turns out it's total and utter rubbish.
Yeah, look, and it's like I say, if that was on the table, the Russians wouldn't agree to it, and they would say, we're quite happy to continue the war because things are going. They really are starting to go pear-shaped for Ukraine.
Yeah. While we're talking about pear-shaped, first of all, I was sent this. This is apparently found in Emmanuel Macron's house. There we are. Bridget's favourite decorations. And of course, we've got another little photograph for you. James, you've got to name who this person is, because this photo was well hidden. And it's not AI, it actually is a proper photograph. Let's have a look. Do you know who that is, James?
I don't know, that Kaya Callas, and
it is.
Lithuania when she was little, yeah.
Yes. I mean, obviously wouldn't want that to get out now, would she?
Well, no, I mean, it kind of ruins her credentials as a sort of Russian-hating nationalist in our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're on the subject of weird and strange things that are not true, let's have a little look at this. Now, you would have heard lots and lots of people getting all happy because a Russian submarine has gone up in smoke. No, it hasn't. Let's have a look. Here it is.
Попытка противника провести диверсию при помощи подводного безэкипажного аппарата не достигла своих целей. Ни один корабль или подводная лодка Черноморского флота, дислоцированные в бухте Новороссийской военно-морской базы, а также их экипажи в результате диверсии не получили повреждений и несут службу в штатном режиме.
Now, they did blur, to be fair to the Ukrainians, they did blur out the dock where the damage is. And of course, this drone hit the pier. Let's have a little look. There you go. As you can see, there is no damage whatsoever. It's hit the corner of the pier. I'll just wind that back so you can have a closer look at it. And there we go. That's where the drone hit. They're saying that the Russians are saying there's no damage to the sub, and the Ukrainians are saying they sunk it. James Tweedy, what's the truth?
Well, even if they'd hit it and it was tied up to the dock like that, it wouldn't have sunk. It might have flooded, but it wouldn't have sunk. It wouldn't be lost. But no, it doesn't look like they've even hit it. It doesn't look like it's listing or anything.
No, they
Maybe
hit the
it's a
pier.
picture of another submarine. I don't know, but there isn't really, yeah, I mean, there isn't a lot of evidence that they did it. They can't really prove that. It's like a lot of things they're doing of late. You know,
Yes.
you probably know the other one that's famously that came out this week.
Which one?
Well, Zelensky standing outside Kupiansk.
Oh, yes.
You know.
Yes. We did a little video for that. And ended up that we found that he didn't go there, but Elvis did, and we played the video on the show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he's probably. It sounds like what they did was they went around. They took him around. It could that video could have been made like 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yes.
Right? He went around and made a video, possibly several at different times of year, so the weather matches the time when you're going to release it. Outside all these places, because all these towns there, right?
Sort of like a world tour, well, like a Ukrainian world tour.
Yeah, they have these great big kind of a lot of them are their big concrete block letters of the name of the town, right, or the city.
Yes,
outside, and the one outside Kupiansk isn't quite as impressive, but there it is. But the fact that it isn't so impressive is what gave it away, because some of the letters were blown off by
exactly that, and the nets weren't. And the nets weren't in the nets weren't in the best of, shall we say, in the best. But then again, if you had been there, you'd have been able to.
The night, ooh, what a night it was! It really was such a night. The moon was bright. Oh, how bright it was! It really was such a night. The night was alive with.
Who knew? If you'd have turned up there, you could have seen Elvis, James.
Russell, I know that film. I've seen that film. It's quite good.
3,000 Miles from Graceland. Yeah, very good film. Very good movie.
There you go. So they faked that, and then they said basically he said he did that. He said that they'd retaken Kupiansk from the Russians,
which they haven't.
And then there was inside some building or bunker somewhere. He's giving everyone medals, right? Giving lots of people medals for recapturing Kupiansk from the Russians. And then the Russians have got videos of them walking around in Kupiansk, like, still in Kupiansk, you know. Here we are. Where are the Ukrainians? I don't know. So all these maps, you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, because they're all made by somebody who supports one side or the other.
Yes.
And there's lots of it in grey, you know, the grey zone. When the grey zone is very big, that's like contested areas, and it's like,
it is.
Why is it so big? Do you not know, or are you just sort of trying to say, well, the Russians haven't captured it yet, or the Ukrainians haven't captured it yet? You know, like
we generally tend to go with our chap from AMK Mapping, because he tends to be very, very accurate most of the time, and that is the latest map today from the area of Kupiansk. So the Ukrainians, as far as we know, the Ukrainians have made some advances, but it's cost them an awful lot of troops, James.
What the Russians said, actually, what the Russian Ministry of Defense, I think it was said, was that they were attacking groups of 2 men, you know, up to maybe 6 men at a time. It's the nature of the war that they don't attack in very large formations or anything.
No.
And there are a few groups like that. Now, they were attacking in pairs, and there were a few groups of between 2 and 6 men who were surrounded in some part of the city, and they were, you know, they were busy sort of, you know.
Well, let's have a look about
forcing them to surrender, right? They were mopping them up. So
should we have a look about? Should we have a look about in Kupiansk? Here we go. Here's Russian soldier. This was taken today in Kupiansk. Geolocated, so we know it's correct.
Сегодня, 15 декабря 2025 года, мы, бойцы Российской Федерации, находимся на улицах русского города.
So I'm a bit confused, James, because that's in the area that Ukrainians are saying they occupy.
Right, okay. And then you can't hear any shooting or, you know, you can't hear any gunfire or artillery fire. There aren't drones buzzing about and things like that. So the intensity of the fighting is not, if there is fighting, the intensity of it is not that great.
Not heavy.
And, you know, I suppose the key point really is that the Russians still have that bridgehead on because it's on a river and they're on the west side of the river, and there are still Ukrainian troops on the east side of the river, near there, outside the city, and the Ukrainians have to keep sort of fighting to get supplies through to them and things like that. So that group of troops is in danger. I don't think that changes the situation. And
but let's have a listen to the resident. Here we go. I'll let you watch this in peace.
Мы вам расскажем, как мирные люди, оставшиеся в Волчанске и Купинске, жили под Украиной. Мы не будем ничего комментировать и добавлять, только интервью очевидцев и факты. Смотрите, запоминайте.
Электроэнергии там давно нет, связи нет, газовые баллоны притащили, газовую плиту, правда, боролись с ней долго, потому что подгорало, ко всему нужно привыкнуть. Ну, потом приспособились, вот как-то хлеб у нас был в регулярном режиме для всех жителей, да. Потому что мы пекли хлеб и разносили тем, кто остался там. На тот момент очень много людей. Потом очень не хотели люди выезжать, а потом просто безвыходная уже ситуация.
Вот вы говорите, они высыпали муку, которую находили в домах у людей.
Да. Обычно хранили продукты. Холодильники были пустые, а люди туда в последнее время света не было, и вот туда запаковывали и мыши, никаких насекомых, ничего, и вот сохранялось именно в холодильниках. Холодильники большие, и туда довольно-таки увесисто влазило.
А цель у этого, извините, какая?
А Бог есть.
Чтобы, наверное, народ выгнать или...
Да, собственно, и народу уже не оставалось.
Приезжали на газельке отынтованно.
И вот эти чернокрасные, как они были?
Правосеки.
Правосеки были.
Они эту скотину ловили, грузили и вывозили.
И это все шло под видом помощи, вывоза животных, кошечек, собачек, кошечки, собачки, типа волонтеров добрых.
Никто ничего не предлагал и не приносил.
Вам такую помощь не оказывали?
Никому не оказывали этой помощи. Сейчас вам точно скажу, это был 23-й год, по-моему, или апрель, или май, когда ходили в Шебекино каву по этой по-львивски. Когда... Вот после того начала Россия территорию, потому что они заходили сюда обстреливать, и администрация сразу вышла.
Вот когда вот эту женщину хоронили, подошли к военным, чтобы дали какое-то заключение, что человек умер, или хотя бы справку напишите, что человек умер, или хотя бы, и что. Они сказали, наши люди отсюда уехали, все, что остались, это не
их расстрелять. За связь с ними выполните наказ.
Это не наши люди.
Даже когда надпись «люди», все равно скидывали.
Вот, именно туда.
Именно туда целенаправленно.
Убила. Доска была.
Во дворе.
Гражданские. И его прямо в эту доску, он недалеко шел, он не видел. Он вышел, шел на огород, и в эту доску разнесло.
Он такой маленький, чупленький был, худенький, он афганец. Эти кассетники прилетели. Один разорвался, разбил собаку, там второй не полностью разорвался, и на нем было написано «Бик ворога».
То есть вы враги?
Да.
Да.
Была и гуманитарка была, да, поддержка была, никто не спорит.
Не надо кормить было.
Но потом, когда уже основная масса народа эвакуировалась, и вы знали, что еще людей дофига осталось в том Волчанске, дальше помощи никакой. То есть выживайте как хотите.
Нас осталось немножко, которых не добили.
Из украинских военных никто не пришел, нет, спрашивали, были нормально.
Раза 3 за все время заходили.
Раза 3. Кто проходили, никто мимо проходили.
И не заходили.
Никто не спросил, а
как вы тут живете?
Как вы вообще здесь? Ну, может, чем-то, хотя у них была поставка, еще было нормально, транспорт насад.
Пока не перекрыли, да.
Пока не перекрыли канал, так сказать, доставки. Было у них все. Могли бы поддержать хотя бы оставшись. Нет, мы уже не нужны были на том этапе, мы уже были чужие. чужие для Украины мы уже стали тогда, когда мы не выехали в общих рядах, так сказать.
Утром Леня отнес соседям хлеб и обратно пришел, и буквально через минут 20, полчаса пришли соседи с парнем своим. Он говорит, я, говорит, не знал, что вы здесь, мы, говорит, так тихо сидели.
Они кофе сварили.
В Рубежском часы в подвале из-под ящиков на деревяшках мы сварили кофе. Ёлки-палки.
Ящик разбили и сварили ребята кофе. Сварили. Кто он им? Отец, сват, брат? Никто. Человек, которого они эвакуируют можно сказать,
видели,
боевые действия идут, горячая точка. Нам надо вывести, сколько вы натерпелись.
Да, может там кто-то скажет, что
просто
там постановочные видео там, и так далее.
Это
Нифига, я не знаю, я был в шоке. Начиная с того, как пришли.
И закричали русские. 26 числа малыш пришел, начал эвакуацию.
И сам процесс эвакуации
день.
по сегодняшний день. Такое впечатление, что, я не знаю, ну...
Мы самые дорогие гости. Сначала нас вывели, мы ходячие, а эти не ходячие, их несли. Их вторым заходом. И еще трое было тоже с Волчанска, только с другой улицы.
На следующий день.
А их на следующий день уже стемнело и сказали, не поведем, потому что страшно, чтоб не убило. Они там переночевали где-то в землянке, тоже ребята их приютили, накормили и все. И на следующий день мы вчера где-то в обед, часа 3, их привезли. Вот нас 7 человек пока. Зашли люди, говорят, я малыш. Позывной мой малыш. Мы русские, русские, кричат. Я русские, села и заплакала. Неужели пришли нас к эвакуации готовы? Неужели нас пришли забирать? Ну, потом уже по лесу нас из руки в руки передавали военные российские. На каждом вот мы идем там.
Now, James, we talk about the impact this war has on soldiers all the time. We don't talk as much about the impact this has on the people who have to live through this horrific thing.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that's notable about this is that there are people who stay in their homes while the city they live in or the town is being fought over. Yeah. You know, like that. A lot of people evacuate, but others stay behind. And some of them get killed. They get killed randomly in the, artillery shelling or crossfire, or maybe they're murdered. They're killed deliberately by the troops. But they are, you've heard plenty of allegations of the Ukrainian army doing that. Right? So, what can I say? So they stay there, and it's like, it was kind of like that during the Battle of Stalingrad. There were people who stayed living in their basements when the city had been basically destroyed. You've seen photos. I'm sure you've seen photos of it. It was it's horrific. The whole city's got, there's just like fragments of buildings left. So people, that's an incredible thing, because those people could have evacuated, to be honest. But I think maybe they were waiting for the Russian army to come.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, James, that when there are, would you want to leave the basement with all these drones flying about and you don't know who's who? Well, no, but the Ukrainian army tells people to evacuate. They want them to evacuate. And it's a way of sorting the people, finding out who sympathizes with the Russians, who wants the Russians to come and take over, because they're the ones who'll stay behind, and that's probably why the Ukrainian army mistreated some of them, murdered some of them. So mistreated, you mean shot?
Yeah, exactly. So there are different levels of it you hear in the stories, but a lot of them were murdered, So this is and maybe that's why they stayed, but they're very tenacious. Those are very tenacious people who've stayed. It's a shame that the sort of auto-translate or whatever was going on there of the subtitles was
it wasn't great.
but but you get some of the gist of it, that they were living there and they were trying to, they were trying to find food, and that it became difficult to fit. They were they were making bread on on fires or something with flour because they couldn't. There was no electricity for the fridge.
When we're talking about this, because there is a disconnect between the people with going on and everything else, and there's also a disconnect with maps. So here's a map of Siversk. So basically, the Russians are making massive advances around Siversk, and of course they're getting there. But I wanted to show this because this is a big difference. Now, the Minorad pocket, we're going to show that just first of all, and of course that is shrinking daily, as they say, and anybody left in there, God help them. But I wanted to show this, James, because this is Konstantinivka, and
Yes.
where a bomb has hit. Okay. Now, when you look at the bomb of when you look at the map of Konstantinivka, to most people, it's a blur of lines, like patterns drawn. Just patterns of lines drawn on everything. And people do not, there is a disconnect between looking at the map and actually seeing the size of these places that they're taking over. Here's Konstantinivka, and this is the bomb that was dropped. So this is the video of the actual place that you're seeing that is just a morass of lines.
Yes, it's overall big.
Now, to look at the map, James, you would turn around and say, doesn't seem like a big place, it's massive.
Well, those little rectangles that you see, each of those is a block, isn't it? It's like, yeah. I mean, it's like maybe it's 2 rows of houses or something, but maybe it's like, in fact, those blocks are flat because, cities in Russia and Ukraine, like a lot of cities in parts of Europe, Western Europe, I mean, are built up in blocks of flats like that. The way that most of Madrid is, or Copenhagen is, right? If you've ever been to those cities, or most Spanish cities, really. So you got, they're densely populated places, and it's a large city, but it has that population density.
I wanted to show that because just so that people get an idea of just how big these areas are, and when we show it on a map, it's absolutely huge. There's something else that happened as well. In the Ukrainian parliament, they started having a bit of a battle.
Почалися сутички.
I mean, this isn't a democracy, James, is it? It's a ragtag bag full of people, corrupt people, who are taking money and making tons of cash off a war, arguing amongst each other. It's a mess, isn't it, Ukraine?
Well, I mean, there was always kind of, there's lots of videos like that from over the years in the Ukrainian parliament of people fighting, actually. But I mean, the parliament as it is now it's a rump parliament because the MPs from the opposition parties basically have been suspended or removed. So you only have some of the political parties and some of the deputies there, MPs, and I mean it sits there and it's unusual for there to be any kind of disagreement with the government, and where there is, then probably that's quite significant, actually. Something's going on, but it's most of the time it just sort of does whatever the government asks. Basically, they put something through and then they vote for it.
Let's have a last thing on this, James, because the last thing on Ukraine before we move on and go into the second half of the show. The Swedish army, the Swedish Navy, are getting very, very upset because the Russian tankers now have uniform armed guards on them, or soldiers. that was always going to happen, wasn't it, James?
Well, I mean, after some of the things that happened where there were attempts to board them or you know, to intercept them and force them to stop in, you know, ports that they weren't sailing to, then yeah, you know, so
yeah.
that's that happened. I mean, and then these attacks that you see on tankers in the Black Sea, that's going to change things as well. You know, maybe they're going to have machine guns on deck to shoot at the drones that are coming in, you know, and radars to spot them coming across the sea. Those sea, you know, those drone boats that they use to attack them. And so that's they sort of, you know, you escalate, then, you know, when you escalate, the other side will escalate. That's the point.
Yes. Andy Edge in the chat turned around and said, I read something about Transnistria today that we're moving into attack. Don't know if it's true or not. They just got more weapons, didn't they, to stop Moldova going in and overthrowing them?
Maybe. I don't know about that one. I haven't read that one.
Okay.
But they've got, I mean, yeah, how do you get Transnistria is this very bizarre territory. It's between two rivers, or it's across one river and between the Ukrainian border, and it's very, very long and thin.
It is.
Like
a little strip.
Yeah, a tiny little strip, but very long. And so it would be kind of, in theory, it would be easy for the Moldovan army or the Ukrainian army, if you like, to attack and then cut it into pieces, you know. But they haven't done that yet. I mean, again, it's an escalation that they don't want to get into, because does Moldova really want to be?
It will get very silly if they do that.
You know, and at the moment, being drawn into this war, and Ukraine has got enough on its plate, really,
exactly that,
without opening another front and having to divert troops there. So, okay,
we will be back after this with some more of the show. You've literally got 1 minute to get yourself a cup of tea. Go to the lavatory or whatever you need to do, and we'll see you back here in 1 minute.